Sir, ang pinaka-aabangan ng lahat, yung inyong mga quarterly, yung inyong mga quarterly zoom in doon sa BBM and Duterte support surveys. Sir, well, okay. We have kahit pa paano kasi we already seen the numbers. May upward trend with BBM up by 2 percentage points, downward trend with Duterte down by 1 percentage point. For independents, down by 5 percentage points, opposition up by 2 percentage points, and so on the line. Pero sir, the qualifier being na all these are still within yung margin of error na 3 plus or minus 3 percentage points ng survey. But I think you also qualified na what's important to look at is the trend in the last 3 surveys more than the numbers themselves.
Yes, you're completely correct, Ed. No, that when we look at these numbers, it's important not just to focus on the final numbers, the quarter-to-quarter changes, but the trend. So for this particular probe, which is, by the way, for many people is highly controversial. No? But then again, because we don't have parties here, we're really trying just to measure, the strength of the brand, the preference of our kababayans. We also want to emphasize that the survey was done at a particular period po, no? Yan ay nakasaad naman dito na yung amin ay 1,200 respondents from all around the country from August 28 to September 2. So marami na nangyari since that time. And so for political pundits like Secretary Sisek, no? We'll probably have some other forecasts, no, based on these the data that we're showing. A second point we want to emphasize is that these numbers are not, when they compare it from quarter to quarter, mababa lang naman eh. They're very slight changes, no. I think notable here is the 2-point increase in for the president nationally, but then again it's supported by at the granular level by a 15-point increase in Class E, 15 percentage point increase in Class E. Now, when you look at the numbers of the Duterte family as a brand, it went down by only 1% nationally. But when you look at the granular level, they went down double digits, no, something like 11% sa Class E over the same period. These are dramatic. That's why we want to emphasize those points. But on the national level, they had ups and downs. The president and the administration, we also want to emphasize third point, the question in Filipinos, alin sa sumusunod ang pinaka naglalarawan ng sinusuporta ninyo sa politika? So yan yung basic question. And dahil wala tayong mga partido, ang unang category is I support President Bongbong Marcos Jr. and the administration. I am pro-Marcos. The next is I support the Duterte family and their political alliance. I am pro-Duterte. The third is, of course, I am the opposition. I support the opposition. We define the opposition here, also when you see at our own media brief, as the opposition associated with Leni Robredo,
yung traditional,
Teresa Ontiveros, the traditional opposition Liberal Party, and the movements, the Dilawan. So we explained this to the people we're interviewing, and they wanted to be categorized. Okay, and so when you look at the numbers of the opposition, they actually went up this quarter from 5 to 7. I know it's not dramatic, no? But the fact that it's moving up, it shows some sign of life and some sign of change, no? Even if it's within the margin of error. But when you look granular, they went up in ABC. They went up in NCR a little bit. So these are the things you want to emphasize. And then, of course, the trend is still continuous from the first, second, and third quarter. That a great number of Filipinos, something like 40%, would not like to be classified based on our classification. 31% are independents, and the rest refused, no? So they're ambivalent about...
Professor Rye, pag-usapan natin yung Class E na apparently doon significant yung baba ni Duterte at akyat ni Marcos. What should we read into this? We're talking about Class E. Ito yung masa. Ito talaga yung masa. Tumaas yung suporta ni Marcos doon sa masa.
Yes.
Would you hazard a guess why?
ayun, at the contrast, no? So plus 15 yung pro Marcos sa Class E and minus 11 yung sa Duterte, no? So I think, it has really to do with the interventions, the initiatives of the administration as far as their pro-poor programs, no? Kasi when I can't think of any significant intervention beyond that. They poured in billions in Mindanao and Visayas, where in Mindanao they sustained their support. In Visayas, they were able to even gain this quarter. And the news that I have, at least the information I have, is that a lot of resources were poured into ayuda, largely anti-poverty program. So maybe that kicked in. It took in 2 quarters for people to see it, but it actually kicked in. Now, nationally, when you look at our probe on jobs and the economy, while it was on a downward trend for some time, it went up in the last quarter a little bit. So there was a little alleviation, and that's also somewhat reinforced by the fact that inflation also went down slightly over the last 2 quarters. So all of these things put together, maybe number one, government interventions. Number two, the massive information drive against the Duterte family and all of these things that are happening. Congressman Nery Colmenares talked about a lot of them earlier. And third, the improving situation as far as inflation, jobs, are concerned. So, but can the government, can the administration sustain this? We don't know. But what we can see from quarter to quarter is an upward trend. For the Duterte brand, it's on a downward trend, but the changes have been slight from second to the third quarter, just 1%.
Prof, kayo lang ang gumagawa nito di ba? Nung ganitong klaseng survey. Ito yata yung ikatlo nyo na
Yes,
same
sir.
survey, di ba? Ikatlo ito. At ang interesado ako, paano kayo nagpasya na gumawa ng ganitong survey na hindi naman ginagawa dati? No, hindi ginagawa dati at kahit ngayon kayo lang ang gumagawa. Ikalawa, anong assessment nyo dito sa tatlong survey na ginawa nyo? Pagpapatuloy nyo ba ito? Magiging paano ba to? Permanent aspect ng inyong mga surveys? At panghuli, anong relasyon nito dun sa mga ibang bahagi na inyong survey like approval rating? Dahil parang magkalayo sila no? Yeah. Parang ano ba yan? Apples and oranges or talagang hindi pa napag-aaralan ng maigi yung kaibahan?
Unang-una, hindi to, well, apples and oranges if you compare this with the trust and approval ratings. Where we have specific people with specific job classifications and jobs, or jobs, and maybe it's harder to compare, the work of, let's say, Jesus Escudero and the vice president, I mean, when you answer the survey, that's not how you answer it. But here it's very clear when you're given this question, sang grupo mas preferred ka. Now, ang challenge kasi sa OCTA is to come out with we're trying to evolve a political culture probe, and in our attempts to do so, we've hit a snag, the history of this survey was commissioned initially in the first quarter of this year, and we released it, and then some people said, why don't you test it, see if this survey means something. We don't expect that it will be relevant after the midterms. I think we're really releasing this as part of a broader probe on politics in our society, the state of preferences as far as our political landscape is concerned. So that's how it is, Sec Ronald. Ito yung namin, ito yung nangyari. So far, ang assessment namin, may sumasagot may gusto magpa-classify. But yun nga, may marami rin nagsasabing, ayaw namin yung classification ninyo So then at 11%, yung iba naman sinasabi, basically ayaw nila yung classification ng Duterte, Marcos at opposition. Yun ang 31% na nagsasabi, 26% na nagsasabi na independent sila. And that by itself is a position. We in the report we also showed na actually sila ang pinakamalaking nalagasan in this particular survey. So some people have taken a side, and the two groups that benefited from independents taking a side, number one, the opposition, number two, the pro-Marcos. Yeah.
Professor, pahabol ko lang. Tinanong kita dati, you said you were going to conduct a survey para malaman kung alam ng mga tao kung ano ang trabaho ng mga senador in relation to your surveys on that so-called senatorial balls. Itutuloy niyo ba yon?
Yeah, we're still designing the question. Pero dahil malakas kayo sa amin, Mami, tutuloy namin yan. Kahit napakamahal itanong yung tanong na yun. Pero,
Thank you.
yeah. So, but it's awareness. Yeah.
Paano masasabi it is a trend kung within the margin of error yung difference, no? How can it be a trend? Usually kasi, ang nasa isip ko kasi, ang trend ay yung labas ng margin of error. No, di ba?
Yeah. Ang amin argument dito is that for 3 quarters, for basically 2 straight quarters, pababa yung numbers. Now, while hindi nag-improve, at when you look at the granular level, significant yung mga changes sa lalo na Class E. So, one can argue that it has not improved. So, in our view, it's in a downward trend. Dalawa na kasing points pwede mo sabihin Now, when you look at the numbers from January, from the start of the year, you can see kaagad, from 20%, now it's 15%. Now, so that then you can say from the long view, it looks like it's on a downward trend. But we don't know. Next quarter, it could actually improve. 5 points na ang binaba since we started.
Yeah.
One can say it's improving. One can say it's an upward trend.
Okay.
But then again, we were very clear when you look at the base numbers, the actual national numbers, we're all within the margin of error. But we have to tell the story of the numbers at the regional and class level, and that's where the major changes were observed. 11-point decrease in Class E for those who identify themselves as Pro-Duterte, and a 15-point increase in Class E for those who identify themselves as pro-Marcos.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
which solidifies our argument that there exists really a downward trend.
Okay, thank you for joining the Storycon, Professor Ranjit Rye, President of OCTA Research.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Salamat po.
Thank you,
Salamat.
Professor.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.